was sitting right next to the Wolgan Valley Railway. And the Wolgan Valley Railway is significant because this is how all the products produced in Newnes came out of the valley. This is what was retorted to produce kerosene and lubricating oils and candles. This is what this railway was all about and what Newnes was all about, shale.
Essentially, it was built to solve the problem of how to get kerosene from way down in the Wolgan Valley all the way back up to the Great Western Railway. They had £1 million to spend, and one of the things they decided they would do is build a railway.
So the shale's fed into a retort, gets heated. As you heat it, all the oil is drawn off as a gas. The gas then condenses into crude oil. The crude oil goes to a refinery and is distilled into the kerosene. The railway was built about 1906, and the technology was basically all hand labour. They'd drill holes, fill the holes with explosives, and the material would be dumped to create the embankments. So there's just this continual process of drilling holes, blasting, shovelling, drilling more holes, blasting, shovelling, and that's how the railway was built. You look at the terrain around here and you think, where can you build a railway? Henry Dean, who had retired as the Engineer-in-Chief of Railway Construction in New South Wales, became involved. And he had been sent to the US on a study tour to look at getting railways in and out of steep valleys. And his solution was to build it with steep grades, tight curves, and use what's called shay locomotives. A normal steam locomotive has what's called a long, rigid wheelbase. So imagine that stick, that's the wheelbase, that doesn't go around a curve easily. But a shay has bogies, and they pivot, and it can go around very sharp curves.
So much labour and so much hand excavation went into creating the railways at the time. Over really rugged terrain, just creating the railway itself was an amazing achievement. To construct the tunnel, they would have had to build timber scaffolding. So we found evidence of that during the survey, tiny prop holes that we used to insert the scaffolding. And we found some little niche holes where they would have had proper kerosene lamps. They're all hand excavated. Finding the hooks on the roofs were really interesting. That would have been where they hung lights. Also, obviously, all tunnels have to have safety refuges, which are kind of human-shaped areas that people can move into so that they're not hit by the train.
The workers built camps all up and down the length of the railway. One of the major ones was Green's Camp, which is where the tunnel workers lived. They had a tent city, they had a butcher, they had a baker, they had barbers, and they always had their families with them, so that meant children too. It was very basic, but it wasn't impossible. The line was always an enormously risky undertaking, and it was through a very unstable landscape. It's wet, there's a lot of landslips, so that meant the line was often unusable. As well, they had problems with imported cheap oil from the United States, which was flooding into New South Wales. And the other thing was labour issues. It was difficult for them to recruit enough workers, but it was hard to keep them and hard to hold them, and there were often disputes. It just really wasn't viable.
Newnes, after a reopening and closing, finally closed about 1932. During the Second World War, shortage of steel, and the rails were sent to the Middle East to use in defences, and all the fittings that attached the rail to the sleepers, they went to foundries to be recycled.
Conservation's always my guiding principle, and trying to make sure that we highlight those features, that we conserve them so that people can see it and understand it, and they understand the history of a place. And I think on this project there was a really concerted effort to create a good visitor experience.